about 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, I was reading an article in a magazine or on the internet, and it had all of these lady contractors that were getting together for something. And I thought, wow, how cool would it be to start interviewing women in construction and finding out, their challenges and things like that. And so I contacted 3 or 4 of them, and the first one to respond and I'm really, really thankful that she did, is our first guest today, Allison Iantosca. She is the owner of F.H. Perry Builders in Boston, Massachusetts. Good morning, Allison.
Good morning.
How are you today? How's the weather up there in Boston, Mass?
It is snowing, just as we would hope it would be up here in February.
Well, so you're probably already thinking baseball up there, though, right?
Spring training.
Was it Red? What are you guys? So Red Sox? What are you
Red,
guys? Huh?
really? Red Sox,
White
yes.
Sox. Oh, yeah, okay. And so we're thinking socks and snowshoes.
Socks and snowshoes. There you go. That could be a whole new trend.
So, and I've been calling this sort of a regional remodelers report. I'm not sure if we're coming out of COVID well, I'm not sure what's going on. The world is a very crazy place right now for all of us. Kind of give us a brief summary of your feelings of the last maybe 8 or 12 months up in your region and in your industry. Tell us about FH Perry first.
Well, we are a remodeling contractor. We don't do any new construction. So the city of Boston treats us really well during most normal times. And I'll try not to keep talking about normal through this conversation
Is
because
there
it's so
such a
tempting to
thing?
keep talking about it. But so where the city offers us multiple opportunities to go in. A favorite project, if you picture a typical brownstone in Boston, is to go in and take all the floors out. You walk in the front door, you can look up and see the
Wow.
skylights on the top floor, and then rebuild it for our client that is moving in there. So that's a dream project for us, and we had a bunch of
Absolutely.
those going last March. And the city, Boston and Cambridge both shut down. They shut down construction in the
Uh,
city. So that was a big pivot point, our very first pivot point of awareness that something big was happening here
mhm.
for us. And we've been responding and pedaling ever since. And I'm really proud of where we are now, but I don't think we're quite out of the woods yet. So one foot in front of the other, that's for sure.
Well, of course, we experienced pretty much a similar type thing here. That's when you learn new hobbies.
Yeah.
You start taking up those hobbies that you've dreamed about all that time. So Boston came in and just said, no more remodeling.
They did, yeah, no more construction. And it was
Wow.
a challenge because we could have sort of fought our way into being considered an essential service, but as a remodeling contractor, and certainly for the clientele that we like to serve, we felt like it was the prudent thing and the responsible thing to do to take our people off the job sites and not have the trades needing to be on the job sites, just given that we had clients that were living in other places comfortably. And so we just needed to put a pause until we got a better handle on what was happening and what the requirements were going to be.
And how long did that last, or is it over?
It is over. We were allowed to go back in the middle of May, and what was wonderful about that is that it gave us a good opportunity to reset. I mean, you talk about hobbies, but there are so many things that we had in the organization that we wanted to pay attention to, and it gave us time to put little task force groups together to really focus on that, the least of which was setting up a PPE protocol to allow us to make sure that we were going back to the job site safely,
Hmm.
while we had no idea what that actually meant.
No, and honestly, I'm not sure that any of us really still have much of a handle. I mean, you do the best you can,
You do the
but
best you
but
can.
the numbers just, they are what they are at this point, and we've all had to learn to live with it. I thought that was interesting what you said, because I felt like, of course, we're all in shock in, I don't know, March, whenever it really, for us, it was starting around March. And then I looked up a couple of months later and I thought, this is interesting because we've all had to just kind of step back and take a deep breath. I mean, it's been painful and confusing and all that kind of stuff, but we did the same thing. We just sort of, well, what do we need to do with our organization to come back stronger? Or, nobody knew what was going to happen.
Absolutely. And you really actually began to find out what you were made of. We had an incredibly competent and committed team that when they understood what we were working towards and began to ask them to support us to create something that was bigger than what we were, because we finally had the opportunity to do it. And then they kind of stepped up. And, sort of one of my sidebars on this is that, much to the chagrin of my marketing company, who we had on retainer, that was sort of one of the first things that felt like we needed to reset and pivot. And I don't recommend that marketing is something that goes by the wayside at any point in any situation. But if there are other ways to sort of pivot and think about it, and we began an internal marketing task force team that has been brilliant because they understand who we are as a company.
Right.
And so we've made some real short-term choices on that front. And so that's just an example of a way that we've kind of gotten better for ourselves.
I had a conversation with a friend of mine this morning who's in New Jersey, actually. And we had a conversation about how this digital media, we were all kind of forced into digital media, whether you knew it or not. You were having your meetings there, your meetings with your clients, whoever. And all of a sudden it sort of changed our world, didn't it? And you're right. You sort of could look at it and go, we can do this, we can do that. And what we can maybe convey our core message a little better because we understand it better. That's very interesting, very interesting. Yeah. And that's worked out for you. What kind of response are you getting?
Well, it's been terrific because it's become really grassroots and very much about connection and relationship, because that's what we're all looking for. So how do we create, we just keep creating lots of different swag opportunities. We have more FH Perry Builder swag than you could ever imagine, but it's a really wonderful way of putting a little package together and handing it to somebody or sending it to somebody and saying, we're thinking of you. And, here's a Frisbee for Memorial Day weekend. Here's a coffee mug for Labor Day. Yeah. Small things, but just making sure that we're staying connected to people. Coffee cards for the trade partners. We really appreciate you. Thanks for everything you're doing. Just anything that acknowledges where someone might be, that has just paid many benefits forward for us.
So your type of remodeling, where you're in these buildings that are what, 200 years old? Are they that old?
Yeah, at least. Yep, yeah. Some. Yep.
And give our audience sort of a brief, kind of a description of what you have to do when you go in an old brownstone, and you kind of have a whole lot of bringing it up to speed. A 200-year-old building, that's quite a challenge.
Yeah, but of course that's what we love and what we've gotten really good at. There's so many different ways that you have to think about it. First of all, of course, there are historic commissions in town that we really respect and want to follow those rules. That's why they're there, and they keep the sort of integrity of the city. And then the next thing, though, are the conversations you have with the clients about how much character do you want to keep in this house? So on Beacon Hill, every single staircase is tilted. That's just the way it goes. Do we want to get this feeling like it's perfectly safe,
where you don't have to be a mountain climber to get upstairs?
Well, it's going to stay steep. There's no doubt about it, but it's steep and tilted. Yeah. So do you want to bring it back? So just different character things like that. A lot of the sort of design trends now are about sticking modern into really traditional settings. So let's keep the big, huge crown molding, but put very modern, contemporary cabinetry in. How do we then level modern, contemporary cabinetry when the entire rest of the house is crooked? Right. So lots of fooling the eye and playing with those different kinds of things. So that's what makes it a lot of fun.
And really, that's what remodeling's about, right? That is sort of what we deal with, regardless of how old the house is. It's making I always tell my clients, remodeling is nothing more than taking on a series of challenges and overcoming them, because your house wasn't built to be remodeled.
Right.
So that's sort of
Right.
how I feel about it. Do you feel, how is your outlook for 2021?
So what I keep saying is that it looks amazing on paper, and it will be the best year that we will have from a top line revenue standpoint, and then really making the big piece will be about making sure that we're securing the bottom line at the same pace and with the same intention. The market is hot. People are really focused on their homes right now. They're in their homes. They want to see their homes change. They know what they begin to dream and fantasize about what they want to do. We have figured out enough ways to make people feel safe about us being in their homes or remodeling their homes, or they're thinking about what their next home is going to be. So we're feeling hot, hot, hot and very happy about that. But like you and I have been talking about, there is still so much unknown. So that's why I keep saying it looks good on paper. And until we're in the house or doing the project, or I should actually even say, well into completion. We had a project that was in demo last year, and they said, we want to move out of the city. We don't want to be in the city anymore.
Oh,
We're going to
wow.
stop this project. So, and of course I need to keep them happy because I want to build their house in the suburbs
Yeah.
when they find it. So
Right.
I had to let that contract go.
You can't scream at them. You can't scream at them, Allison.
Right,
You have to.
right. No matter what, I guess, huh?
It's always tempting.
Yeah.
But no, the buyer is totally the one thing that's really changed in the last few years that I've noticed, regardless of what we've had to deal with COVID and all the other things we've been dealing with, is that the buyers have changed. I think there's environmental changes such as the pandemic and things like that are driving it now. But what really started driving it, I believe, was the internet. And but it's an interesting thing that you just said, because there's a lot of people that are doing second homes, or instead of flying across the world, they're going, we'll just go buy some land outside of the city so we can just get out of here.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting that you say that. So in our market, the biggest thing that I've noticed, one of the qualifying questions we used to have is this your forever home? Are you going to stay here and raise your family here and, then modify the home as you get older? And that was always a way we sort of understood whether or not we had found a client that was going to really value our process and our craft and our stewardship and all those different pieces. I don't think we use that question anymore. People are making decisions in really different ways, and especially now with the pandemic, this awareness of how quickly life can change. But even pre-pandemic, you just never knew when you were going to move off to a new location because of a job or a family move or another choice. So the way people are buying has definitely shifted in what they're prioritizing inside the home, inside the remodel, and the sort of things that they want to do. And so we've really had to pivot our way of responding to what the needs are so that we can make sure that we're delivering a product and a process that people are comfortable with.
That's very interesting. Actually, I think that is the absolute right question I should ask and I normally do. Of course, one of the first questions I ask them is this your last house, or is this just another house? And a lot of people will call you and try to pre-qualify that, and they'll go, this isn't the house we're going to stay in forever, so we don't want to spend the most money. And you go, okay, which room do you want to do?
Exactly. Well, there's also a real adjustment as to how people are buying, I think, and I'm going to have to figure out how to pivot because it's so personal. We always want to be in front of the client, talking to the client right out of the gate, but I think there's going to be sort of this whole movement towards, how do I send an email on a Saturday and myself as a client, as a buyer, qualify whether or not I even want to continue on in conversation with this builder? That is not how we have ever done things, but I think we need to be able to be mindful of what's coming down the road that way, even for high-end clientele, even for people who are wanting to be in their forever home. We've just all gotten so used to the ease of the internet and making that cold connection a little warmer before we actually dive into the human connection.
Yeah, it's been a very challenging adjustment for a lot of, particularly those of us that have been doing this for many, many years. And remodeling is such a personal thing. You know, for me, it's very personal
Very personal.
because I fall in love with the house, and most of the time, I kind of fall in love with the people I'm working for. I mean, it's very important to me how all of that works together. And now I can interview somebody, and I know you're the same way. When you're talking to a potential client, you're kind of interviewing them as well. That's what you were just telling us. And sometimes they never look you in the eye. They're busy looking at their phone. You're like, wow, things have changed.
It's amazing how things have changed.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And the sort of interruptive patterns that they're willing to take around that.
Well, and you're now on call 24/7, and just
Right.
in case you didn't know that.
Yeah. Oh, is that what's happening?
That's that's the real
That's why I'm
problem.
tired, right?
Right. That's when you learn to use the do not disturb feature of your phone.
Yeah, but it's a huge thing. And certainly as an employer, it's a huge thing of how to help people manage that for sure.
I'm so glad you were able to make time for us today, and I'm so glad that you're having such a great rebound out of this. We seem to be in our area having a similar type thing for the most part,
Good.
and it seems like we're all kind of waiting for the next shoe to drop. And I hope we can get to where we can just be comfortable with what we have. But it has been just a wild ride this year.
It sure has.
Allison Iantosca with owner of FH Perry Builders in Boston, Massachusetts, has been our guest. Thank you, Allison. It's always great to have you, and I look forward to our next conversation. Thank you so much.
You bet. Me too. Thank you so much.